So when you look at those young men who are using steroids in their 18, 20 years of age, and they develop this, because it's been proven that testosterone decreases hepcidin.
So HFE is a gene that's supposed to be recessive, and you're supposed to need 2 of them.
The age of survival was 55. And if you had a ferritin below 200...
The thing is, because some of the rate of loading is slower, it actually has a slightly different effect on the body.
Iron is one of the master pro-oxidants in the body.
So we see some young men who can't recover their levels of testosterone on their own after they've done cycles, and why perhaps cycling steroids, illegal underground steroids.
But the quality of that test in terms of the coverage of different genes.
So you might have a gene for Alzheimer's, but there might be another one that's actually more protective against it. But those...
When I was in medical school, they never talked about iron excess or iron overload being an issue. It was always iron deficiency.
Also kind of verifies that, hey, this is probably why they've got low testosterone, and the two fit nicely.
And that's how the mechanism of action that iron causes secondary hypogonadism.
So how do you know that you're going to live a long, healthy life, especially if you have high ferritin? Can having high ferritin, high iron levels affect your longevity? How would you even know? Where would you start? Should you be looking at this as a preventative measure? We're here with 2 special guests, Dr. Rudy Eberwine and Robin Jewsbury, who have a story to tell about what happens if you have high ferritin and how you might be able to fix this. This is one that you don't want to miss. Your longevity may depend on it, so keep watching. Okay, so we're back with Robin Jewsbury and Dr. Rudy to talk about the latest news on what high ferritin can do and why you should look into making sure your ferritin levels aren't too high, and to go even maybe a step further to see if there's a genetic reason like hemochromatosis, which may be one of the reasons why you may need to be on testosterone, but also something that may potentially shorten your life. So I think we're going to start with Dr. Rudy, who's going to give us a little overview of what is high ferritin hemochromatosis. What does it all mean? So hi, Rudy.
Good to see you, Mike. Always excited to be here. So it's really great, and to be with Robin that's done so much work about iron overload is really exciting. So I'm going to tell you my journey into discovering iron. So, I've been doing testosterone replacement, age management medicine, anti-aging medicine, longevity medicine, no matter what you want to call it, but basically it's about prevention and trying to increase our health span, right? Or number of years that you're going to be healthy, not just lifespan. I want to be healthy and live a long life. So what is aging? Aging, if you look at antioxidant theory of aging, is basically you want to decrease the number of oxidative stress that you have in your body and increase the antioxidant to have a better balance. And I've been doing anti-aging medicine for the past 15 years, and I knew nothing about iron. And I discovered that iron is one of the master pro-oxidants in the body, causing oxidative stress, right? We talk about all kinds of things causing oxidative stress, and we need to pay attention to those, whether they are toxins, psychological stress, food that we're eating, excess visceral fat, all of those create oxidative stress. But what about iron? How come we're never talking about iron? So I actually started checking iron and ferritin levels on my patients on testosterone therapy, because some patients over-donate blood. Some patients just go and donate blood every 2 months with no measurements of anything. And a lot of patients would crash their ferritin. So I would get patients come to me and they say, I'm on testosterone therapy. I don't feel good. I need more testosterone. When I check their ferritin, it's because they were over donating. They have a ferritin of 20, 10, 5, and they feel tired. Their thyroid is not working. And it was the low ferritin. But as I started checking this, I started finding a lot of patients with high ferritin levels, iron overload, iron excess. And I wasn't prepared to interpret those studies. When I was in medical school, they never talked about iron excess or iron overload being an issue. It was always iron deficiency, iron deficiency anemia that was talked about. And when we look at it, iron overload is a cause of secondary hypogonadism. So if you are checking, if you are treating patients with testosterone, if you're in the business of longevity medicine, iron should be on our radar. And for everybody listening to this, they should know their iron status. And as I was looking through this, I found Robin's website, and he put out a lot of great content about iron overload, iron excess, and hereditary hemochromatosis. So it's an honor to be here with Robin, with you, and be able to talk to this, because I feel that our community of biohackers, of guys who are saying, I want to live till I'm 120, you need to know your iron levels.
Absolutely. So let's talk about your story quickly. Robin, you founded Check Iron. It's also a Facebook group called Check Iron, so you need to be invited to that, or just go and you'll allow them to go in. And so, what happened? How did you find out you had this issue? You said you weren't really sure. Doctors didn't check it. You got fobbed off. What happened exactly?
Yeah, I mean, what happened was we were doing family tree DNA, and just to find out about our heritage and the family and so on. And I thought, oh, why not upload it to a medical site just to see what it says. And I was quite shocked to see that the number one problem I had was hemochromatosis. I had the strongest form, which is called homozygous C282Y.
And this is on the genetic test that was linked to the Ancestry site. But at that time, you didn't have any iron studies or ferritin studies?
Nothing. In fact, I went to my doctor and showed him the DNA, and he fell off his seat. He really didn't know what it was or anything, but he agreed to do a ferritin test for me.
Oh, that was nice of him. So what the test back? What did it show?
It's at that time it was over 1,000. So he phoned me up and said, "Oh, it's over 1,000. We need to do something about this." So he booked me with a specialist.
Okay, a hematologist or
a liver specialist.
Liver specialist. Okay.
But I was booked in for 3 months from now. It's NHS.
Right.
So I went private and went to what I found a specialist here in London, and a liver specialist, and he looked at me and decided to take me on as a patient.
Okay, and what did he do? What was the treatment for the?
Well, he didn't. To start with, he himself didn't believe I had hemochromatosis, even though he measured my ferritin to be 1,400.
Okay.
And but my transferrin saturation was only 60%, and he thought it had to be like 90% before you had hemochromatosis. So he did an MRI. It's called a Ferriscan MRI. It's a special type of software in an MRI machine. And he discovered I had 5 times the danger level of iron in my liver. So that's when he said, right, we're booking in, you start, they're called venesections here.
Right.
In America, they're called phlebotomies.
Yes, or therapeutic phlebotomy,
Yeah. And we started 2 weeks from then, and that's right.
So it's 2 weeks from when you got the MRI result to when you did the venesection.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got all that time, because I mean,
it took months.
All you need is to you start doing the venesection, and it goes down. It goes down quite quickly.
Exactly.
The ferritin. I mean,
it took 8 months.
8 months to get yours down.
2 weeks, because basically at that stage I was 60. I'd had it all my life, and it had slowly built up. As I actually had another gene that slowed things down, and that's why when I started investigating this. And I looked up that I should have died at 55, according to some equations and graphs and so on. So I sort of was slightly worried about this.
Of course, yeah. I mean, that's the problem with some of the genetic tests that you get, because you'll see certain things that say you've got a 90% or 80% predisposition over the other people in the population to have this, but what you might not know is maybe there's another part of your genome that's somewhat protecting against that. I think that's even with Alzheimer's. Yes. You might have a gene for Alzheimer's, but there might be another one that's actually more protective against it. But those tests don't always give you that data unless you, I guess, went to a specialist. And even it's still so new. Regular medicine doesn't really deal with the genetics in the way we should, really.
Yeah. And if I may say something, that there's what Robin said about the expected median age survival with a ferritin above 1,000 was 55. So this was done from a study called the Scandinavian Heart Study. It's almost the equivalent of the Framingham Heart Study in the US, where they followed about 9,000 patients for over 23 years, and about 6,000 of them died. So they had a lot of data. And the one biomarker that they found had the most correlation with longevity was ferritin. So they saw that if you had a ferritin above 600, median age of survival was 55. And if you had a ferritin below 200, median age of survival was 79. So
Okay.
once you want to know what your
Yeah.
ferritin level is,
Um,
as we said, just like Robin, he had a ferritin of 1400. His median age of survival on that paper is 55. But because he had other genes and we're going to learn more about this. It's not an exact science, but it's still a direct correlation. Ferritin is a marker also for general inflammation. So if I'm going to do a blood test, a biomarker, in our clinics, we do
Yeah.
blood tests 4 times a year. I follow 103 biomarkers. Ferritin should be one of them because it gives you information. And if it's elevated, you want to find ways to decrease that because it is going to decrease your oxidative stress.
Absolutely. I mean, years ago, in all our basic tests, especially the tests that we pre-screen patients for TRT, we recognized that one of the causes of low T is hemochromatosis. And one way we weren't able to, and most patients wouldn't want to pay out of pocket for a genetic test in hemochromatosis, but as a proxy, if we saw a very elevated ferritin level, now we can say, hey, maybe you need, and we have done this in the past, go and get further testing for hemochromatosis. But then that also kind of verifies that, hey, this is probably why they've got low testosterone, and the two fit nicely. So that's why what we found very important. I think you that at your clinic as well. But you're saying, Robin, that the NHS, this is not standard of care at all.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that I'd done an ancestry test, which is for really family tree information, but the quality of that test in terms of the coverage of different genes, they do 20,000 genes, whereas if you ask the doctor to in the UK to do a test for hemochromatosis, he'll only test for 2 mutations of the HFE gene, even though there are 3 mutations, and there are other genes as well that you should test for. So I mean, you implied that a DNA test was expensive, but an ancestry test can be, I think currently it's on special offer for $39.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Yes.
the full genome test.
Yes.
I've gone to Nebula Health to get my full genome test, and you can keep that data, and
Yes.
you move it to other companies for analysis. It's a lot cheaper. When we've looked at going to one of the laboratory companies to do a genome test, and sometimes it's very specific, and there's only, like I said, a few things to look at. Then those were a lot more expensive. So you're right. Owning your data is better. And if you feel like the regular medical science ought to catch up, but they don't. I think there's just an industry that's just does it that way. So yeah, I definitely, what I was saying is in general that people aren't going to go about, and like for our patients, they can pay, for our full comprehensive test, £199 as they're getting screened for testosterone. We've got the ferritin, iron, transferrin saturation, TIBC, all in that test included. But it takes more time to do those genomic testing as well, which is why that's not a standard screening, at least.
Yeah, in the UK, in London, and meeting with 2 UK residents. Why I was excited to talk about this is because the incidence of hereditary hemochromatosis is so high in Northern European ancestry. It's actually called the Celtic curse. And when you look at the incidence in the UK, I think it's heterozygous. It's 1 over 200 people, right?
1 in 200, yeah.
In Ireland, it's 1 over 83.
Yeah.
So once it's actually the most common genetic disorder in Caucasians. So why wouldn't you want to check yourself in doing this? And the problem, so now I'm going to do a link between iron overload and testosterone, right? Because as you were saying, high iron excess is the cause for secondary hypogonadism, because studies do show that iron can deposit in the pituitary, and specifically in the anterior pituitary, starting at the age of 30, even if you don't have
Hemochromatosis.
So when you look at those young men who are using steroids in their 18, 20 years of age, and they develop this, because it's been proven that testosterone decreases hepcidin. Hepcidin is the protein that facilitates intestinal absorption of iron. So you think about a young man at 18 or 20 years old, does 3 to 5 years, the steroids, testosterone, increases their iron overload, causes more deposits of iron in the anterior pituitary, causes fibrosis. And that's how the mechanism of action that iron causes secondary hypogonadism. And it is irreversible. So if you have, so because it is an area that can be fibrous so easily, there's a really good paper that was written recently, exactly looking at the relationship between iron overload and testosterone. So anybody with who comes in with a diagnosis, signs and symptoms of low testosterone should be screened for hemochromatosis, because the clinical symptoms are about similar. Most patients with high iron, their symptoms are brain fog, fatigue, joint pain,
Yeah.
no
But
testosterone. So you cannot distinguish that. So as you are saying, and I see this all the time, I have patients who come in, they have low testosterone and they have high iron. Yeah, so I try on my younger patients. I have an 18-year-old who came to me the other day. He had his ferritin in the 600. He was heterozygous for C282Y of the hemochromatosis gene. And I felt that he had his testosterone was in the 260 with many symptoms. He had secondary hypogonadism, which I think is from iron overload. And I said, at first, let's try to do venesection, blood donation. Let's try to reduce your iron. We did that for 6 months. We did get his ferritin below 100. But he remained with low testosterone. And at this point, we put him on testosterone, but at least I had a cause for his low testosterone,
right.
a reason for it. And on a patient like this, and anybody on testosterone should monitor their ferritin, because testosterone will increase your intestinal absorption of iron. So you will have higher iron levels that can affect your longevity.
Well, yes, that would be the reason why some people do better, don't have the anemia when they go on testosterone treatment, right? But it's the opposite effect if that's kind of causing the high testosterone. It's interesting what you said about, certain young people that were on anabolic steroids, then they're actually holding on to more iron, which is then damaging their pituitary more. And this could be perhaps where we see some young men who can't recover their levels of testosterone on their own after they've done cycles, and why perhaps cycling steroids, illegal underground steroids, may not be best for their health. And perhaps at that point, they need to resign to the fact that they'll need some form of TRT for life going forward, rather than damaging their health by going on and going off.
Exactly.
Especially being monitored for things like iron overload.
It needs to be monitored. And that's the thing. There are studies showing that young people who've done cycles of steroids in their youth have a higher risk of developing or being dependent on testosterone later on. And they say they fried their pituitary. They didn't fry it, they rusted it.
They rusted it with iron. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I had not thought of it like that before. But
And I'm so impressed with what Robin has done. Robin has a PhD in physics. No clinical experience, but because he discovered by accident that he has hereditary hemochromatosis, and he put out such amazing content on YouTube, online. His Facebook group is great. That I've learned so much with this, and I'm bringing that to my patients now. I'd love for you to talk a little about your iron check and what people can get out of this.
Yeah. So what I did was I decided that that genetics was potentially could be a reason why you could actually prevent hemochromatosis, because you can actually, I believed that you could use it to predict that someone is going to get ill at a certain age. I had to prove this, so I advertised on Facebook mostly that I could analyze their data for them for free and anonymously. And I've we've been running for 5 years, and I've built up 2,500 DNA data sets. And the results of that is that we also ask people if, when they got ill, or if they hadn't got ill yet, what age they were when they got symptoms. And we've discovered that there's a relationship not only between other genes to do with hemochromatosis. So there are actually 5 types of hemochromatosis. Most of them are rare. So they're called 1 to 5. So it's hemochromatosis type 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. Type 3, we've discovered, is supposed to be rare, but it's not rare at all. It's nearly as common as type 1, but no one seems to realize that yet.
why is that? Is it not measuring like you've measured it?
It's a case of what you don't look for, you don't see, because the sort of papers on it has found some small pockets of people in central Italy, as though that was the only place. But that clearly isn't the case. Or maybe a lot of people from central Italy moved to America and
Yeah.
had lots of children. I don't know, but it is quite common. And in fact, what's even more common is the juncture where actually some people are type 3 and type 1 at the same time, and quite actually more, sort of 19% of the people that uploaded were type 1 and type 3 of the suffering people.
So what would the symptoms be of someone who's type 1, 2, or
Just
3?
the same.
Just the
So
same.
I mean, it's true there can be differences, and there's some of the mutations of the HFE gene, which is the common one. One, in fact, I was talking to Rudy about this earlier, that H63D does have slightly different symptoms in that the ferritin doesn't go so high, and you get more joint problems and so on. But generally, my view is really it's always the same disease. It's iron overload. The thing is, because some of the rate of loading is slower, it actually has a slightly different effect on the body. There's also another thing is that you quoted 1 in 200 as the UK rate of people, but that's the diagnosis rate, and 1 in 83 in Ireland. That's the number of people that are diagnosed. But there's an equal number of people that aren't diagnosed.
They don't even know they're walking around.
They don't know. And many of those are what we call carriers. So HFE is a gene that's supposed to be recessive, and you're supposed to need 2 of them to actually get the disease. But what we find is that you don't need to. And a lot of people are now realizing that anyway. Even the people that treat me in the hospital I go to every 3 months, I talk to them what's going on there, and they will admit that there are carriers that overload.
So that's an important point, because being a carrier for hemochromatosis, meaning you have 1 out of the 2 genes, the mutations, right? When I went to medical school in the 1990s, I learned about hemochromatosis, but they told us it was only if you have both genes. You have your homozygous or C2A2Y that you need to worry about. Well, that's a myth. The carrier myth still exists. I will send some of my patients who come in with elevated ferritin, high levels, low testosterone, so they have a clinical manifestation of that high iron, and they have 1 out of the 2, they are heterozygous, and the hematologist will tell them, no, you don't have hemochromatosis because you need both genes. It is completely false. By which matter way you develop iron overload and you have symptoms with it, you have the disease. So it's not that you need to have both genes to have the disease. Even 1 gene can cause that. So it's a misnomer. We shouldn't even call it a carrier, because you can express the phenotype of the disease even with 1 gene.
I guess that makes sense, right? You've got the genes, they're going to make the proteins.
The original sort of recessive law, which was created, was right for pea plants and so on. But they subsequently allow that law to fail. If you have type 1 and type 3, that's a polygenic disease.
Right.
But also we go further and say that all the metabolic diseases using other genes, the genes used by the immune system, are damaged in some way. The metabolism is out of control, then it will actually change the rate of flow of iron in the body as well. So that's why it's really a polygenic effect, not a monogenic effect, which is HFE gene is supposed to be, and it's never monogenic. And I don't believe there are any monogenic diseases whatsoever.
Agree.
Wow,
It's not as simple as
there's a lot we don't know then, or a lot the way science or medicine hasn't moved along with the data.
Yeah. So my question for myself, studying medicine, and I'm, I go to all the conferences, the anti-aging conferences. We see each other at those conferences. How come people are not talking about this? Why isn't that the subject? So I call that the irony blind spot, that people are not talking about iron. They'll talk about cholesterol for hours. They'll talk about, like some molecules for hours, but not talk about one that's been proven. I think there's a few reasons for this. Number one, it's a pretty new discovery. HFE gene mutation was only discovered in mid-90s. So that's only less than 30 years. The hepcidin, the transport molecule for iron, was only discovered in the early 2000s. That's 20 years ago. So when I went to medical school, all of those things were brand new. Second, we thought it was a rare disease. So we still say, the average physician will still tell you, if it's not, you don't have both genes, you don't have homozygous, you don't need to worry about this. Now we know that it is false. And it's only now Dr. Leo Zacharias coined the term ferrotoxic disease. How so many diseases are caused by the oxidative stress of increased iron, because it does damage mitochondria. It creates a protein called lipofuscin that causes problems with autophagy, so increased senescent cells. So we're talking about all of this when we talk about longevity. Right. We'll never mention the master pro-oxidant, which is iron. So yes, in our practice, we put our patients on antioxidants, right? Right. Take quercetin, take green tea, take all of this to counterbalance the oxidative stress. And
there's something right.
But what if we could decrease the amount of oxidative stress? So we need to come from both sides. And I feel like the field of ferrotoxic disease is going to increase and it's going to become more known. Most conferences I go to, I talk about this. Most people do not know. There's so much misconception, misinformation about iron that it is really scary. When you think about our field of testosterone replacement, what we talk about is secondary erythrocytosis, right? That we know testosterone causes an increase in hemoglobin hematocrit. And the big question is for our patients to donate or not donate. And there's a lot of controversy about that. Right. There's never been any studies that show that there is an increased risk of cardiovascular disease with secondary erythrocytosis induced by testosterone, completely different than PVER. So we know that. So I won't tell my patients to donate just because they have an isolated high hemoglobin. But if they have a high ferritin, not only do most patients don't feel well, and we have studies now that show that it affects your longevity. So we need to understand how to manage those levels.
No, absolutely. And I think the whole controversy around do we donate, not donate. I mean, if you had none of this, if you weren't on TRT and you're just, I guess, a nice person that like to donate because the blood supply needs you, right? You wouldn't think twice. You just donate and you get the little dinner at the end of the year. You donate every 3 months, right? That's just kind of a normal, so for some people are really into donating blood. So why is it such an issue in the TRT community if someone were just to donate every 3 months or so? Obviously, monitoring the ferritin is hugely important because even in those cases, you could drop the ferritin too low and then have the opposite problem of anemia.
And if, there's even a gene, I think it's TMP or SS6, right? That the people who have that gene tend to have a lower ferritin level. So yeah, patients like this, I don't want people to just go and donate every 3 months and they don't measure their ferritin levels. Because if you drop your ferritin, that comes with a lot of problems.
But normally on the donation side, they're going to, I think they check that anyway to make.
Very interesting that you say that, because when you go, especially in the US, I don't know about the UK, they do a little light and they check a point of care testing, and they tell you they're checking your iron levels. No, they're checking your hemoglobin level, because they won't let you donate for a man if your hemoglobin is less than 17 and for a woman less than 13. So I went to donate that on the Red Cross in the US and they told me your iron level is 17. I'm like, no, it's not my iron level. It's my hemoglobin level. There's actually a POC ferritin that we're going to get at our clinic. You should monitor your ferritin level, because this is what has a lot of correlation with longevity, and if it's too low, that you're not going to feel great with it.
If you like content like this, do click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to get our latest updates for when we drop content. It really does mean a lot. And until next time, to your wellness, this is Mike.